All right, everyone can see
Can
Dr.
everybody
Walker's
see the
screen.
screen? Yay.
I know I can.
Yes.
You can? Okay. So let's just yeah, there we go.
All right, so just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. And this housekeeping will apply to all of the next 3 sessions as well. So video, we're going to ask you if you at all possible to turn your video on so we can all see each other and be interactive. And also, if you're not speaking or don't have a question, could you mute yourself so we won't have any background noises? And then in the chat, and feel free to drop any questions in the chat, as I stated before. And also, if you agree with something or have a question, you could always raise your hand and do reactions on the Zoom. And just last, that the meeting is being recorded because we like to share this so others could, if they didn't have an opportunity to join tonight, be able to view it later. And thank you.
All right, thank you. Am I up? That is officially me? Okay. Thank you everybody for attending the boot camp. This is our first series for the year. We do have 2 more boot camps scheduled, so please be sure to check back with us and stay in touch so you can attend those as well. So I'm BP Walker, but I want to give a shout out at the beginning of our presentation about our host and our sponsors. So this is it. This is being hosted by Congress Heights Community Training and Development Corporation. So if you're not in contact with them, you need to be, since they are really doing a lot of the community and economic development work. And the sponsors are funders are from DC government. I know we talk a lot about our governments and how we feel about it, but please let me reassure you, these 2 agencies you're going to get to know a lot about, particularly the Department of Small and Local Business Development, because they handle all of your licensing and certifications, et cetera. And so this is part of DC's effort to return taxpayer dollars back to you and provide programs that will help you gain financial independence, self-sufficiency, et cetera, et cetera. And then the last sponsor is the DC Department of Housing and Community Development. So they are also another agency charged with our neighborhood and community development work, which small businesses play a very, very important role. So like I said before, I'm BP. I will not read this entire thing, but I just wanted to give you a little bit about my background. So yes, physician, educator, consultant, entrepreneur. My current role right now is that I'm a director at Venture Philanthropy Partners, Raise DC. I don't know if everybody's familiar with them, but we are an investment firm and we invest in other nonprofits. And so I'm one of the directors there in the investment practice group. So over the last 20 years or so being in the DC area, I've done a lot of small business development and a lot of economic development, about 420 businesses or entities up to now, 30 million in dollars in some shape or form I've had to be responsible for or be in touch with. And I am a former professor and adjunct faculty in various areas of business, public administration, as well as business psychology and leadership. Okay. You have my email. You are free and welcome at any time to shoot me an email, and we will be setting up appointments for one-on-one sessions. So please don't be shy. If you have any questions, even after the bootcamp, you're welcome to reach out to me. So we already did the introductions of everybody. Am I correct, Monica, right? Nobody else joined in. Okay. Shameless plug, please. If you have a current business, you're welcome to put your email and website, social media account in the chat. We support our local businesses. So I actually do visit the websites. And if it's something I like, I will actually purchase. So feel free to do that.
We do have a new comment.
Okay.
Kiera, welcome. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your business, if you have one?
Hi, my name is Kiera. My business is called The Hair Creamery. It's all natural hair products. I'm currently just starting, so that's why I joined the boot camp, so that I can get some insight and information from you professionals. And thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming.
No problem.
Yes, good to have you. Just a little warning, if I look away from the camera, do not be alarmed. I'm not trying to be rude, but I have two screens. I actually have three. Working from home has just changed my life. And so I sometimes am pivoting from side to side because the seeing you in the chat box is on one screen, but seeing the presentation is on another screen. So please, I apologize in advance if I'm looking away. Okay, so just a quick overview of the boot camps, tell you about the setup so you know the expectations. So this boot camp was called Owners and Operations, and subsequent boot camps will be about marketing, customers, financial, and overall business planning. So within this summer, we want to cover all the major areas of getting a business started and running a business for growth and be successful. So please, if you can attend all the series, this will be recorded. You will get a wealth of information that you need to get your business off the ground or make adjustments so you can increase your profits and revenue, etc. So owners and operations, 4 sessions. Tonight, we're going to cover the actual business owner versus manager versus entrepreneur, and what's the difference and what does that mean, as well as starting to introduce the business systems that if you're going to own your business or you're going to manage the business that you need to be aware of. And so we're going to lay out, we have a nice little layout to show you the systems you need to be mindful of. Session 2 and 3, we continue the discussion on systems, and we're going to focus on the customer and product related systems. And in the final session, we're going to focus on data and the financial systems. Many small businesses neglect to have a data system, and unfortunately in this world, it has become one of the most prominent systems that you need to have in your business. But we'll get all into that a little later. So our learning outcomes, so by the time we're done, you'll have some basic principles of management. You'll be able to define entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship and different from ownership. You'll be able to identify the entrepreneurial process, which is a tool you'll use to evaluate business ideas and opportunities. You'll have an idea what are the elements of a successful business, as well as learn about the key systems, as well as how do you document all of that into a business plan that you can use for, if you're going for a loan or you're building partnerships, or even just for your own. Most importantly, your business plan is your own roadmap for your business. Who should attend? All of you are appropriate attendees for us. So thank you. So this is for aspiring entrepreneurs as well as individuals who are just not sure. That's okay too. But the way we've structured this is also helpful information if you're an employee of a small business. And then those of you who are been in business for a little while and you're looking to grow, or your established business and you want to scale, some of the things we're going to cover are also very pertinent to you. Okay. So this is just our agenda. I'll go ahead and just go into our opening discussion. Little disclaimer I must add, because the information we're going to provide is general guidance, and by law we can't provide any legal, accounting, investment, or professional advice, because that needs to be done by a licensed or certified accountant, lawyer, etc., etc. So what we try to do, as part of my style, I try to make sure the information is as current as possible. But this is the first lesson you will learn, is that in today's age, you have information overload. Everybody talks about how you can start and grow a business. Not all of it's accurate. And if it worked for them, then it's true for them. So I try to stick to the pure fundamentals that are applicable to many types of businesses. And then when we get into a one-on-one session, that's when we start to tailor the information to your particular scenario. Okay. So here's the opening discussion. And I think I got the right group to start this off with. Now you can find hundreds of articles stating why you should start a business, but very rarely do you find any documentation of reasons that people have identified that spurred them on for starting a business. So I found one, and I provided the link below. I encourage everybody to Google this article. It's from the Washington Business Journal. It's called The 4 Reasons Why People Start Their Own Business. Because I don't know how long they're going to keep it up as a free article. So if you can grab it, that'd be great. But let's talk about the 4 basic types that they discuss. So number 1, there's the passionate creators. And we all know these folks, right? They're starting the business all out of love. They have a passion for what they do, and it's a key element to the success of the business. Number 2, you have the freedom seekers. So those are the people in which the business is an avenue for them to take charge of their own career, dictate what they want to do, how they want to do it. So they don't want to be under the thumb of any other boss. They want to be their own person, and that's why they started a business. Number 3, you have the legacy builders. And these are the folks who wanted to start something new. And many times they want to pass it on to subsequent generations. But for them, it's all about that achievement of starting something new and bringing it to market and seeing it through fruition. And then you have others who have started a business simply because it was out of financial need. And so as a result, because of that situation, they might be fearful. They might have, because they can identify the very real challenges that you have been experiencing running a business day to day, because their impetus for starting is quite different from those who might have elected to start a business. So our first opening discussion is, based upon these 4 types, what is your reason for starting a business? If we were to just use these 4 reasons, I'll give you a second to think about it. And Monica, you monitor who's raising their hands?
I am.
Okay.
We have Kiara and then T Brown.
Okay. Let's go with the first one. That was quick. I was going to give y'all a little couple minutes, but all right, this is great. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I already know. So for me, I want to be financially free, and also I want more time, more experiences with my family, like to be able to just do more instead of being constricted by a job and the time.
Okay. So time is a big feature for you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's going to get challenged a little later, but that's okay. All right. So we have one freedom seeker. Who's next?
I feel as though I'm a passionate creator and a freedom seeker.
Okay.
Freedom seeker, I definitely want to be in control of my own time and just have the freedom to do what I want and also run my business.
Mhm.
And as far as passionate creator, I have a passion for seeing children really enjoying themselves and having a good time. So I see that moon bounce and like cotton candy machines, that brings a lot of joy to children. So I have that passion to keep that drive and that happiness and instill that within the children. So I think I'm both.
So let me tag onto that for a second. If you had to pick the number 1, which would it be?
Oh, I think I'm gonna say freedom seeker. I think that's what I'm gonna say.
You sure? Because I don't know if everybody else noticed, but your voice changed when you started talking about the children. You had a far more energy, and that's not in a negative way. When you we could feel it, what you mean about working with the kids, and you provide an example. You didn't do that quite so much with the freedom side. So that's something you just need to think about. Okay?
Right. Okay, I'm gonna think about that.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else? Did we cover everybody who got their hands up? Okay. So I want you to hold on to these 4 reasons, because they're going to come up multiple times in our discussions down the line. And just for those, just to add my 2 bits in here, I am all about legacy building. So yes, I could say I'm passionate about some things I do, but that doesn't drive me. That doesn't get me up at that. And most days. Freedom seeker, that's nice. Yes, when you own your own business, you do have certain controls over your time. But yeah, that's not gonna wake me up as well. But building a legacy is where I get jazzed about. So I have to be mindful of the decisions I make in my business because of the reason, because sometimes it can cloud your decision making. But let's hold on to which one you chose, and we'll see how it comes back up again.
Alyssa put in the chat that she's a freedom seeker.
Okay, freedom seeker. So we got 2 freedom seeker, 2.5. Because somebody, because one person chose freedom and passionate. Okay, that's a good mix. All right. So in this section, I want to just kind of talk a little bit about small businesses, and I want to make sure you have clarity around the definition of it, because it has many variations. And the Small Business Administration is where we usually go to look for those definitions. There's not one definition of a small business, but rather the small business are defined by size standards, and it varies by industry. So I want you to be mindful of this, because depending on the industry you're competing against, you might think that businesses that make $8 million a year, you might think that's a large businesses, but $8 million and below, the government considers that a small business if you are in the floor covering stores. So you see that if you had a furniture store, the size standard is up to 22 million. If you are a new car dealer, there's another delineation they make. So it's not by the amount of revenue, it's by the number of employees. And so what I want to do is make sure you understand that as you start your business, you get familiar with the industry you're in, as well as understand the standards. So this is why it becomes challenging when you're competing for government contracts, et cetera, and with who they have classified as a small business. I also want you to think of this as a motivational slide, because this tells you that the government knows that a single person owner of a business, like most of you are or going to be, can grow to this size of business. It is indeed possible. It has been done, and it's been done to the degree that they get to document it on this kind of chart. So I want you to hold this up, not something to freak you out and make you overwhelmed, but it's something to motivate you as to what is going to be your goal, revenue, or size in terms of number of employees that you're shooting for, okay? So now, I use a very basic definition of a business because it kind of level sets everybody, because everybody can have different perceptions of it. So we just talked about what the government thinks a small business is, and they have variations. So this is what I have come up with over the years. I've been modifying it of what is a business, and I don't tailor it if you're any particular industry or business type. It doesn't matter to me. So for me, I start off with a business is an operation, meaning it's legally established, it's licensed, it's insured, it has an organizational structure, and it has the necessary systems to conduct business. And that operation is going to provide a product and or service and a customer experience that the customer is going to think that's valuable because it solves their problem, which may be a need or a want. This right here is very, very critical. Sometimes as business owners, we like to do what we want to do for the customer. It's really all about what the customer feels is meeting their needs. And so the other part of the definition is you can provide a service, product or service to a customer or groups of customers. And in exchange, the business collects payment timely and efficiently. I had to add this part into the definition because over the years, I have learned that some business owners don't actually pay attention to how they collect payment. Like they are late on the invoicing, or they don't have their credit card machine working right. I'm going through that battle right now and I wanted to give a donation to a school and pay their vendor for the goods that they needed. And the vendor didn't have a credit card machine. I was like, what? Are you not in business? So if you don't have these elements, I don't consider you're in business. I think you have a hobby, but that's just me. So I just want to make sure you're mindful that you need to have these elements to actually have a business. Any questions so far? No, everybody's good? Okay. So now, just because you own your business doesn't mean you're an entrepreneur. So this is another resource I want you to Google. This is an entrepreneur.com article in 2017 that's going to highlight a lot of things we talk about, but I want you to download this and put this in your library of articles as references, okay? Be mindful of this statement. Just because you own the business doesn't mean you're an entrepreneur. There are two different lanes, and you will need to decide if you're going to focus on just on ownership or are you going to be entrepreneurial. So what does that mean? So a business owner, for all practical purposes, and in terms of what the government thinks about you, whether that be the tax administration, the licensing agency, the business owner is the legal proprietor of the business. They're the ones who owns the assets and has rights to the profits that that business generates. That's it. A business owner that business owner does not necessarily have to be involved in the day-to-day operations decision-making. They can be involved in just a very high level meetings periodically to discuss the progress or whatever the case might be, but they have the control to delegate those types of activities to a business manager, some employee within the business. So owners are simply the investors. They're the ones who put in the capital to own the business. Now, when you started your LLC, you told the government, yes, I own this business. Now you have to make the decision. Now, if I'm an owner, am I also going to be the manager of the business? Because the manager, whatever, is so many titles that you can label it. We're not going to get into that right now. But they're responsible for the day-to-day actions that you need to accomplish to run the business. It's usually an employee. The owner can be the manager, but you got to choose to do this. And for some reasons, this is why we might be getting irritated at some of our jobs if you work for a private corporation or a small business, because the owner is not really involved as much as they should be, and they have pushed all the decision-making off onto you. So we got to be mindful. There is a role for the manager, but it's not equivalent to being the owner, and vice versa. So you have to choose if you're going to be both. And so the manager is the one actually exercising the management of the business. So I included a little brief definition. The management is a practice. That means it is composed of, there's an art to management, there's a science, and it's a craft. The art of it, this means you can get creative in terms of what do. You got to have a vision of where you want to take the business day to day. The science of it is what we're going to talk about a lot. How do you set up the systems? What's appropriate for your type of business? What is the data analysis you need to do to make good decisions to grow your business? And then the craft part. The craft part is the practical learning. There are some things you're not going to learn until you actually start operating the business. So I know sometimes we like to attend trainings to give us all the answers. Sometimes if you want to know if your business idea is going to work, you really just have to go out and do it, right? Any questions so far? Everybody okay? Y'all quiet. Monica, anybody say anything? Okay. So here's your model of management. So when you get these slides, I want you to print out this particular slide and post it somewhere where you can see it on a regular basis. Because if you, as the owner, chooses to be the manager, you're kind of at the center of things. And these are the elements you will have to manage in a very general way, right? you have to manage within the business, and then you have to manage external to the business. And some of you, if you have a very large business, that might be other departments as well as outside the organization. So that's what this means, into the rest of the organization. So if you have multiple departments, you have partners, etc., you might have to do that. But keep in mind, you have to manage inside and you have to manage outside. The areas you have to manage are the actions, meaning the work the business has to do. You have to manage the people that actually going to do the work for the business. And you have to manage the information. As the manager, you're the filter between information coming in and going to your employees and information going out external to the organization. You're also responsible for framing. That means determining how you're going to approach the work. And sometimes that could be a style thing based upon your personality, just based upon your past training, etc. And then there's the scheduling. So your approach to work, and then you got to get down to how do you put it on a day-to-day calendar of when things happen in a way that are going to be most productive. So the reason I want you to have this in your mind is because many business owners have a tendency to want to only deal with the parts they like and not all of the areas they need to do to grow the business. But here's the thing, you can learn to be better in areas that you might be weak at now. So it's never end of all. You can learn what you need to learn to grow your business. So no one has the complete upper hand to be successful. Everybody can grow, build and grow a successful business. And so if you understand that this is the role when you're doing the day-to-day activities and when you're first starting out, it's just you, just like it's just me and my business. If you keep this in mind, you end up exhibiting leadership. Leadership is manage, practice well, meaning if you're able to juggle these things, you actually demonstrate to others leadership, okay? Leadership is not just telling people what to do. Leadership is getting people to do things because you've given them the right information, you've given them the resources to do the job, you've encouraged them, you've motivated them, etc. So that's just one example, okay? So put a star in this slide when you get it and print it out, post it on the wall. Any questions so far? Any new people we need to be mindful of, Monica? No,
We have
we're
one
good?
person, SBTA coach. I'm not sure who that is.
Are we doing intros?
Just Balden snooping in.
Okay.
I was about to text you, Balden. I thought it was you.
Okay, so we just discussed business owner, business manager. Let's set those two things to the side for a second. Now we want to talk about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, this is typically the definition you will find in most dictionaries, many business books. They'll say it's somebody who organizes and operates a business, taking on all the risks to do so, blah, 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 something like that. That's what you commonly find as the definition for entrepreneur. I just would like you to consider another perspective. You don't have to agree with everything I say, but I just want you to think about it from this perspective. Not to say entrepreneur is not just a person or type of person. It really is reflective of a management process. It is a mindset. And it is a mindset in which how that person thinks. And they think like this: the pursuit of an opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. I know what you're thinking. You're like, that's a lot. I know. But some professor wrote this book, but it's one of the most powerful definitions of entrepreneur that I've seen. All it really means is that somehow a person sees an opportunity, sees, an idea, here's an idea, sees a problem and says, you know what, I think I can fix that. And they move forward, even though they don't have all the resources yet. So they might not have the money, they might not have all the contacts, but they put in their mind, you know what, I'm going to lay out the steps to do that. That's different from being an owner. An owner just owns the shares, the assets, the profit, may not make any managerial decision. The entrepreneur is constantly looking for the opportunity and are constantly asking themselves, how can I capture that opportunity? Okay, so you can use the common definition or you can use this pursuit of opportunity definition. I'm going to use the pursuit of opportunity throughout the rest of this presentation, but let that sink in for a second for you, okay? Now, I'm going to give you the other side of the coin of an entrepreneur, and that's an intrapreneur. It's basically the same type of person, but they work within a company. So they don't own a business, but they are employed by somebody else, but they bring that same mindset to the job. And they tend to be self-motivated, proactive, action-oriented. They take initiative because as an employee, they're constantly looking for opportunities for their employer, their business that they work for to be better. Many of you right now on your job are entrepreneurs and never labeled yourself that way. You have been doing things for years to make the company better. So now you gotta recognize you might be already an entrepreneur, even though you might not own a business. Does that make sense to everybody? Let me get everybody's thoughts on that. I'm gonna let this marinate for a second. Any thoughts? Monica, can you follow up with the group?
I'm going to call someone names out in a second.
She'll do it too.
Okay.
Everything is making sense. I think right now in my current state, I'm definitely an entrepreneurship. Yeah, it's making sense.
Okay,
But
so you pursue opportunities. Ideas come to you for some reason, right?
yes.
You have the mindset. Okay, you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Kiara says she agrees,
I
and Ron says it's making sense.
Okay, okay. So I also want to encourage you that anybody can develop this mindset, because it's not about reading a book. It's not about going to a class necessarily. Let me destroy the myth. You don't need an MBA to start and run a successful business, but you do have to have a particular mindset that'll allow you to go through the challenges of starting and building a business, okay? So what are your risk rewards? Of course, the owner, they get all the profits, they own all the assets, so that's what they get. They are complete control, whether they're there every day or not. But on the other hand, they're the ones legally responsible if something were to happen. If there's a lawsuit, the owners usually get named sometimes, and they are ones putting in the financial investment. So they are actually taking on the risk for the business. The manager entrepreneur, you know, if you're working for a business and you take on the entrepreneurial type of mindset, you might have personal job satisfaction. You don't have any financial investment, so that might be a positive. It allows you to get those creative juices out, but you don't have to take on the risk of starting a business. But you may have some legal liability. Although most organizations, they'll have some insurance policy to cover their employees, but you might want to check with your HR. But so that's really important why you need to follow company rules. They might be a decision maker, but their control level might be very limited. So you be mindful of that. That sometimes can interfere with somebody being entrepreneurial because they are constrained because they don't own the business. And a manager does all the work, but may not receive profits. And this has been a very big deal lately, as we've been talking about. One of the things that the results we're finding about COVID, that as the wages have not grown as fast as they should be in terms of recruiting new people for jobs. And there are very few companies that have profit sharing, meaning that the owner or owners have decided that whatever a portion of the profits they split with their employees. There are very few companies that do that. So that's another drawback of being the manager. On the entrepreneur, on the other hand, you invest time, money, and effort And that could be a plus or negative. So that's really up to you how you see it, right? So if you having to start a business because your financial struggles, you might see it as a negative. You might see it as burdensome. For others, they might see it exciting because they're pursuing that freedom or they're pursuing their passion. There is also risk. I put that as a plus and negative as well, because some people love risk and they like to figure out ways to minimize risk to take advantage of an opportunity. So that's really up to you. What's your risk tolerance? And then the entrepreneur gets personal satisfaction. There's a sense of achievement. That's why a lot of business owners who are entrepreneurs, they'll say stuff like, well, you know, my business is my baby because it's feeding a part of them. That's the reward they're getting out of it. Okay. So the question for you as part of your homework that you will need to think about for the rest of this week is, which one are you going to be? Are you going to be an owner? And are you going to have an entrepreneurial spirit to being an owner? Are you going to be an owner manager, also known as an owner operator? Or are you just going to be an owner and not be involved in the management, day-to-day management, and you don't really want to be entrepreneurial? You just want to buy a business or buy into a business as an investment, et cetera, et cetera. But you got to make that decision, and you could do all of them. To be quite frank, you can invest in small businesses. You can start your own thing. You could be an owner operator. You can be entrepreneurial on your job. But you got to decide when you're in one of those buckets to help drive how you do your work. Again, the entrepreneur can be all of them. It could be an entrepreneur, could be the owner. They could be the manager of a business, and so they become the intrapreneur, and they could be the owner operator. The manager, on the other hand, has more limitations than the other. You can be entrepreneurial and be the entrepreneur. So what I want you to do as part of your homework is just think about why you started the business. So back to the original article you talked about the 4 reasons why you wanted to start a business. You got to think about which of these buckets are in alignment with what you want to do. Because if you're passionate, but you're not sure you want to go down of just making, of starting a business and owning it all yourself and doing all the work, you might want to think about, do I change jobs to pursue my passion? Or do I do both? Do I change jobs to pursue my passion? I get more experience so I can open up a business that's related to how I want to do things. It's all possible, but you just got to know what areas you're looking at for yourself, right? I just included here some other titles for the 3 types that we talked about. So there are a lot of variations. So I just included it here. Be mindful, there's a lot of trends in naming. And so a lot of people like to say, well, I'm a chief executive officer and don't even know what it means. So be careful, know your business type, your industry norms, your business strategy, and your customer perception to determine which title will fit best for your business. And I just included some examples here. So I don't know if you know, but the gentleman who founded Calendly, it is of color. So I like to shout out those of color because not a whole lot of tech companies run by people of color. Yes. And he is founder and a chief executive officer. So he started the company and he is remaining with the company to be its most senior level manager. That's how you can look at it. Okay. If we look at Apple, you have Tim Cook is the CEO, but he was not the founder. Steve Jobs was the founder. So this just gives you examples of some of the other titles. There's a series of vice presidents that are other managers that support him. And then Robert Johnson, after he sold BET, he went on to found another company, which is great. In that company, he's listed as the founder. And because it's a large corporation, it has a board of directors. He is the chairman of the board. So he's not always involved in the day-to-day as same as an employee would, but he has a lot of responsibility of the governing structure for that organization. So what I want to show this to you is you have such opportunity to grow your business to a stage that you could never imagine. So do not limit yourself, okay? Take inspiration from all of these folks, right? And Tim Cook has been very entrepreneurial because it's a hard act to follow Steve Jobs. And Apple has been very successful under his leadership. Okay. Now, I just threw this in here as a little discussion because this is a bit of a pet peeve of mine. And you could take the slide with you, and as you go about your neighborhood and visit your neighborhood stores, always ask yourself, is this operation being run by the business owner, meaning a mindset if they just own, they don't do a whole lot of managerial, or is there an entrepreneur behind the scenes? The reason I ask that, because we always know, particularly in the Black community, we always know that one dry cleaner, that one restaurant, they got the best food, but they don't take credit cards. And back in 2017, just over half of US small businesses didn't accept credit cards. But in today's age, it's almost an expectation, right? As a customer. And sometimes you can be a business owner. You started off very entrepreneurial, and over time you could get stuck into the usual routine and you lose that ability to see new opportunities. So be very careful with that. Success sometimes can numb your senses to keep striving. So I just put that in here. For on our session 2, I'll bring this back up to see if anybody had any businesses that fit this description. So any thoughts, questions so far? We are rolling along. Okay. Everybody's good? Okay. All right. So let's get into the life cycle. And again, there's information overload. If you were to Google this, there's going to be many variations of it. Don't be alarmed. In the business world, we accept that there are variations, but this is a very general one. So that's the reason I like to use this particular version. It's very clean. I put the references there so you can always Google that site if you want to go in there and read the entire article on business life cycle. So this is very general schematic of what typically happens with a business, or what you would hope to happen with your business. There's some sort of starting point. There's an introduction phase in which you launch the business, but there's very little sales because you got to get the word out to people about who you actually are. They're very high costs because, again, you're starting up, very little profits. And then hopefully you start to scale this little upstroke here. All right. And it doesn't happen as clean as this. Sometimes it goes through it goes through a wiggle down the line. So don't think it just shoots up like this. But in the growth phase, you have more sales, you're managing your costs because you got money coming in, you can lower your costs, and you're starting to have some profits. Then you get at the maturity, you're very consistent with your sales, you definitely reduce costs. So you've scaled your operation, and as a result, the profits are increasing. Now, if you're not paying attention, there's always an opportunity for you to hit the downcline. And we all know businesses that this has happened to. Let me give you the most famous example. Do y'all remember Blockbuster? Does that ring a bell to you? Yes, no? Anybody? You can put in the chat.
Yes.
Okay, so they hit the decline because they were a very mature business, and Netflix came along and they paid Netflix no mind. They were like, oh, that'll never work, right? To get your stuff in the mail. No, people like to come in and get the tape. They'll never do Netflix. But what happened with Netflix? Netflix was entrepreneurial. They moved from the mail delivery to online delivery. So they continue to improve themselves. And so they had this growth stage, and Blockbuster, unfortunately, had a very dramatic decline. And what was a very top business in the United States is no longer in existence. So that brings up the entrepreneurial process. And this is what I want you to keep in mind as you think about your business. The business always starts with an idea. And that idea is always about solving a customer problem. So the idea is, oh, I recognize that that's a problem for somebody, but the idea has to have a possible solution, because it's that possible solution that you're now going to investigate. So step 2 is opportunity evaluation. Okay, you have the idea. Now you got to see, is it worth it to put my time, money, and effort into it? Because an opportunity has to be something of potential. It's potential to create something new that will generate economic value, not create something new just to be something new. It has to have economic value for you to be in business. Remember the statement I made about what is a business? You got to collect payment. So if it doesn't generate revenue that lead to profits, it's not going to be an opportunity. So once you determine just on some preliminary research whether it has some viability, you're going to go into planning. And this is the deep dive. You're going to go into analyzing the opportunity, analyzing the potential customers, that's the market, analyzing who are the team, staff people I need on board to do the work, and what other resources do you need? Do I need a space? Do I need technology? How much money I need? You're gonna try to work out as best you can in the planning stage. So this is where you come out with a business plan, and step 4 is the easiest part. That's when you launch the company. And that's all about just submitting the right documents into the government agency. And I have a whole slide on that, so you don't even have to worry how that's done. And then you go into growth phase. In the entrepreneurial process, that's about getting the business off the ground, starting to make sales, starting to get customer base build that. So you're shifting from planning to execution in the growth phase. So you might be asking yourself, well, what this got to do with the business life cycle? So don't worry, here's what happens. Many of you are right here. You might not even be at the idea stage. You're at a stage that precedes that. That's the aspirational stage. There are very few articles or blogs that talk about the stage, but this is where you're considering it, you're thinking about it, you don't know what kind of business you want to start. You just know you might have some interest in starting. Then there's the idea. These stages happen at the pre-launch, pre-revenue, okay? Then what happens is you have the idea, and that's when you start to think about, we're laying on top of this, the investment that might be needed throughout the business life cycle, okay? Because remember, investors are the owners of the business. So various investment stage from idea to maturity, okay? Now, here's the key point you got to remember, and many entrepreneurs forget this, is that once you have that initial idea to start the business, you put in the seed investment to start the business, that entrepreneurial process needs to continue as a cycle. You have to keep looking for new ideas. You got to keep improving the product. You got to add to the product line. You might have to add stores, add reach to get new customers. So this is the part people neglect. They get really caught up about how much money they will need, but don't pay attention to the process that they need to have on a regular basis to keep the business growing, reach maturity, and then have an extension. This is when businesses reinvent themselves because they're constantly looking for new ideas. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? What are your thoughts? Everybody's good? Anybody got any thoughts?
Makes sense.
Makes sense. Your voice dropped off a little bit. What's going on with that? Is that just you processing?
That's me processing that, and I feel like I'm within that cycle.
Okay, good.
So,
Good to know where you are.
And I'm trying to get out of that cycle. So
Out of which part of the cycle? Which one you think you're stuck in?
Can you go back to the slide real quick?
Okay. So you're past this because you started already, right?
Right. So I feel like maybe early stage investment. Like
So you're
I'm
still
just
in the
like,
introduction,
yeah, and I'm trying to
get
get
to
out of
growth.
it. Right,
Okay. So
right.
you don't have enough sales yet, and you still got some costs that you got to pay for, and so the profits are not, are not enough right now. Is that what you're thinking? That's where you at?
Yes.
Yeah. So you got to get some momentum to start getting this curve, but don't forget the entrepreneurial process. So let's go back to that. So you got to look for not on just ideas on new products, but new ideas on how you make the business run a lot more efficiently. So if it's more, we got to identify your problem. Is it the number of customers? Is it the pricing? I have customers, but not booking frequently enough? That's what you got to think about. What exactly is the issue to help you to get to the growth stage? But we can talk about that one-on-one, but it's good that you're thinking about it in this way.
Cool.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Somebody else went on mute, came off mute? I'm sorry, I saw your. Is that Kiera? Do you ever thought?
Yes, you can keep going. I'm following along, but yeah, I'm in the first stage too. My thing really is marketing.
Okay.
That's my biggest thing, because I've launched a business before and I stopped doing it, but it was just marketing, getting it out there, talking to people. I have to learn how to have enough confidence to myself.
Yeah.
Basic.
Yeah. Today's business environment, the owner entrepreneur has to be far more visible than, let's say, 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I am uncomfortable about the social media presence. I never used to release a picture of myself, but I have to do that as part of doing business now. The key to marketing is not to have identified all the channels, but what is the value you offer to the customer? You got to get that information in front of them on a consistent basis so that when they have the need, they'd be like, oh, okay, that's my solution. Okay.
Yeah.
But we're going to get to marketing on a little bit on Thursday. And then we'll have a whole boot camp about it. So we'll get to that. No problem.
Okay.
So now this is what I want you to think about, because it's a lot to manage on your business, right? So I'm going to use a systems approach to help you organize all the things you need to do for your business. I just included a very basic definition of business. It's a little technical, but these data folks, they like to, make up technical stuff. So the system is simply a group of parts or elements that are arranged and working together, and it's such a consistency or pattern that it produces a characteristic set of behaviors every time. And those behaviors are the function or the purpose of the system. So if I use that definition, your business is just a system made up of multiple systems, in which these are the elements. You have the operation, the products and services, and the experience you offer. You have the customer, you have your payment. These elements are part of the larger system of the business, and each one of these have subsystems within it. So all the business systems are going to be involved in either one or all four of these areas, because the purpose or the function of the business, and I put some examples here, are to what? Generate revenue and profits, satisfy customers, satisfy employees, support community. And you can add to the list based upon, remember back to those 4 reasons you started? So if your reason for starting a business is to have free time, to have the freedom, you might say, one of the functions of this business is I'm going to build it so I get to have free time. So you got to know the end result in mind so you could build the system to get you that result. Many entrepreneurs, owners do not think of the end result. They just think about all the steps that they got to do, and they hurry around to try to do them, and they don't think about what's the end result I really need. If you want to build a business to pass down to your children, then you got to set up the business to pass down to your children. You know, so there are some just fundamentals you have to decide. No business counselor could tell you, but you have to decide. Are you going to have the type of business that donates back to the community? That's great. But you got to build this system so that when you collect payment, there's enough profit to go back into the business, and there's also enough profit to support the community. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so what are the systems? So I've broken it down. It looks like a mess, but that's because I tried to think of every little thing so that we could get it on the board, and then you could determine which one are more applicable to your. Not every business will have all of these elements, and not every business will have the same size system for their business type. So keep that in mind. You're going to build what's going to fit your purpose. So in the middle, the most important part, the number one system is the legal system, because that is going to kick off compliance, the security, record keeping, risk management. You don't have the business if you're not legally in compliance with all the laws and regulations of that jurisdiction. That's just, no one could do anything else. You can't do any of this until you have legal. So you're always going to start with legal. And then I grouped some of the others. And so there, and these, we're going to talk about all of these on Tuesday, and as well as the session next week. So I've broken these all up, so we have enough time to discuss them. So they go from production, this is all about product, to marketing, financial, research and development. Many small businesses do not have research and development. Health and wellness, both of the individuals in the business as well as the organization, communication and technology, management personnel, and then whatever facility you might have. Okay, so I added this slide in case people, some learners like a list. So I just put a list here so you could just see all the elements we're going to cover. So why do we need to look at it from systems? Because the decisions you make for your business are going to be continuous. You might have solved the problem in the business last year. You may have to face that same problem this year, because there are external forces that are going to change how your business operates. The most glaring example would be COVID. It's not just because it was a health problem, but it was a public health problem that triggered a lot of government regulations and requirements. The government literally told businesses they had to close, okay? So, but even if there wasn't COVID, there are all of these factors that you have to adjust to continue the business. And then the business has an internal environment, and these are all the systems we're going to talk about in this boot camp that are constantly moving. It's very dynamic. And this is what overwhelms a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs. But if you know this is part of the game, then you know how to work the game, okay? For the sake of time, I'm going to come back to the challenge questions on our next go around, but I just put a couple of examples of type of businesses, and we'll pick out which of these systems I need to focus on. But really, I want to get to the legal. But any questions so far? Any questions on systems? The overview? No? Okay. Great. So here's the rule that you learned tonight. No matter what you do, legal is going to be the first system you set up for your business, because it's the only way you get to operate. So here's what you will need to get yourself started. So whatever forms you have to fill out, you need to have this information readily available. So I just tell people, get it together, have a special notebook or a folder for it, have it all nice and neat so that you can have it ready for whatever forms you have to fill out. So you need your start date, whatever that may be, your business name, If you're going to use a social security number, which I do not advise, you should get an business employee identification number. And that number is it's like a social security number for businesses. That's the easiest way to say it. You need to have a description of your products and services, because what the type of business you have is going to dictate the type of legal structure, the type of business you need, the type of permits you need, the type of insurance you need. So this is critically important. So you really need to sit down and think about it. But the government has classifications for businesses. So you need to write this description out, however brief. So we have somebody who does the mobile entertainment. You'd be like, I have, bouncy house. Yeah, I mobile this. You're going to write that out, just bullet point it. But then you need to look up on census.gov using the North American Industry Classification System, and you're going to get the right code for your business. Okay. This is all free, so don't pay nobody to do this. And because you're going to need that number later for your taxes. And then some of you want to go ahead and do government contracting, and they will require these other numbers that are all very free to get, but you still need the same information 1 through 5 to get these other numbers. We'll talk more about this part in next week, Thursday. And then lastly, you need all your contact information, including the web address, social media accounts. More and more I'm seeing on forums where government agencies are asking for your website. Sometimes they actually do look, okay? So you're gonna set up the legal ownership structure, and you're gonna go see our friends down at DCRA. They're the ones who handle all of the licensing, all of the legal applications, etc. Most of you will probably start off as an LLC, a limited liability corporation. It's the easiest form to set up, and it's not as complicated as a corporation. Some of you might be tempted to go for a sole proprietor. That usually doesn't require any submission. No, it does usually require no registration, but it also doesn't protect you. Because if you're a sole proprietor and I sue your business, I'm actually personally suing you. So you got to be mindful that even though the LLC requires some paperwork, some record keeping, it's just beneficial to separate your personal finances from your business finances. And then the thing to remember, whatever legal structure you choose, it has tax implications, right? So based upon the form of the legal ownership of the business, there's different ways the government wants to get its money. So I included a nice little chart here for that. And we'll talk more about taxes on the financial discussion, but I just wanted to put it here that whatever legal type you choose as your ownership structure, you got to be mindful how the government is going to tax you. So if you're a sole proprietor, everything is going to be on your personal taxes. If you're an LLC and it's just you're a single member LLC, the IRS is going to tax you as if you were a sole proprietor. That's just their rules. I don't know why, but it's their rules. So you'll file what's called a Schedule C on your personal taxes. If you choose a corporation, which is far more complex, has far more requirements, but it provides you more protection to separate your business and personal finances. But you will have to file a personal and business tax return. So it's a lot more paperwork for the benefit of being separated, okay? So I'll let you review that, but we're gonna hit that back when we talk about the actual financial system. So here's the form for DC if you're gonna do an LLC. And some of you already done this, but I want you to remember, just because you submitted your form and set it up, does not mean you don't have to regularly check and update your information as required. And that's what that's a mistake a lot of people make. They'd be like, oh, I don't need to hear about this. I already set it up. But they don't know they might have to renew. That if they change something, if you change an owner, you change a phone number, you change an address, you have to go back and resubmit your information. Of course, there's a fee. So be mindful how you make changes. Two things I want to highlight. Number one, do not pay anybody to submit your LLC papers. We've had a number of clients that use like, was that LegalZoom? You do not have to do that. And they get caught off guard with this registered agent question, okay? This is just asking, the government is asking, who do we contact if we need to reach this business? That's what you're saying. You put your name and address if you're in DC. You do not need to have a lawyer's office. You don't need to have an accountant's office. You can act as the registered agent, right? Because if you put in another company, like if you use LegalZoom and they put themselves down and the government sends you a notice, it's going to go to LegalZoom and not to you. Now you got to hope that whoever sets your LLC up forwards you the information. You don't need to do that. And then down here at number 7 is where you're going to put the ownership information, the names of the members or managers. So here they're using manager as owner. Don't get thrown off. It's just the government's way. This is where you put the owners. You're going to list each person, and then you're going to say how much control they have. So somebody owns 50% of share, or do you have the whole 100, whatever the case may be. And that's your LLC setup. So legal is the first thing. This is the first step. After that, there's a whole series of things that you will end up having to do. Some of it will be quite automatic. Some of it you really need to put on your calendar. There will be some laws you have and regulations you have to follow. So once you have the ownership structure, you have to register your business with the tax authority. So you will have to register with the local DC tax agency. With the EIN, we would have covered for the IRS. You need to get the appropriate license, but your license will be determined by the type of business that you have. Remember I said you needed a description of your business? This is where it comes up. You got to get an occupancy permit. So if you're going to be at home, you still need to get a permit. DC is very mindful about that. And then you need something that's called a clean hands certificate. It means you're going to sign an affidavit that you don't owe DC government more than $100. So you need that to be true before you sign, because you need this business registration and all of this information to apply for your license. They want, and then you submit all of it together. They have streamlined the process. It's very nice, but you've got to do it. But I'm going to show you a copy of the form so you know exactly what you need to do. Some of you might have a trade name. There's a separate form for that. Or you might have other intellectual property like copyright, etc. Most of you won't, but some will. And then based upon your ownership structure and the type of business, you need to choose your insurance. And it's a whole list of insurance types. And I provided you, I provided some supplement information. I list all of them that you need to consider. So don't get overwhelmed, okay? So that's the second layer. That third layer is that, okay, now you have the business, you need to write up some basic policies and procedures. What's the payment policy? What's the return refund policy? What's your website policy? So there are some basics that everybody needs to have that to make sure you're covering yourself. So a customer can't complain and say, oh, you didn't give me my refund. You can say, well, the policy says nothing else after 30 days or whatever the case may be. Some of you will need other permits, particularly if you're going to have a physical space. There's permit for signage. There's permits for other types of activity. So you got to be mindful and keep up to date of how the changes that happen with the government agency about this, okay? Now, all of this stuff, all of this paperwork, you have to have a system of record keeping. You can use cloud, make sure you label your folders, but as soon as you get a receipt, as soon as you get the license, the business registration, just upload that stuff and organize it in a nice folder because you're going to need it for other things. So you got to make sure it's handy. And then all of the information has to be secured. So that's why I like cloud storage for documents. If you like to print out stuff, you need to get a filing cabinet with a lock. You might need to have a security system if you have a home-based office. These are all the things you need to protect your information. But in addition to information, you got to protect people. So you got to have the right insurance for car insurance, the health insurance, workers' compensation, and you got to have just procedures and how you or employees will operate. So you got to protect your customers while they're on your property. You got property and facility security, and then your digital and data security. We'll get into these when we get to the technology and infrastructure. And then lastly, on the fourth layer, here's the thing. After a year of you doing this business registration, you got to do all the renewals. You got to renew the license. You might have to renew a permit. You have to file your taxes, and you have to renew your insurance. This is why legal has to be a system. You got to have a system of all, you got to outline all the things you have to do. What you do is you put on your calendar like a meeting invite and say, when are all these things due? And you make it come up every year. That way you won't forget. You have your storage of your information digitally, and you have physical hard copies if you want it. Because if you do not stay in compliance with these areas, your business will run into trouble, okay? And so I will warn all existing businesses who say, oh, I don't have to look back at my LLC papers. Yes, you do. If you moved, you change the address, you change the phone number that is pertinent to them, the government reaching you, you got to check that stuff every time, because the government won't care. They'll say, well, we sent you the notice. You know, that's up to you if you didn't get it, because they're going to use the contact information you provided. Luckily, DC has a portal where all this stuff can be done online. It's great. They've come a long way. I got to give them credit. All right, so this is just the business license application. And I just wanted to highlight, see, you need your employer ID number, you need your certificate of occupancy, and then you need your tax registration for, your tax registration for DC. You're gonna sign this clean hands affidavit. Again, they're gonna ask you to insert your EIN number here. You're gonna indicate what kind of license, and they have a description for all of them. Part B is where you're going to indicate your ownership structure. So remember the legal forms you submitted, you're going to indicate which one you are, and then you're going to fill out all your contact information. And then again, it asks you for who is the point of contact. This can be you, because they're just like the legal structure. They want to know, who do we reach out to if there's an issue? Okay. Anybody with any questions, any thoughts? That was a lot we covered, but I wanted to get us going. The next set of sessions, we're going to be doing a deeper dive at individual systems. But any questions so far? Any thoughts? Are we anxious? How are we feeling?
I'm excited.
Oh, I like that one. I like that one. Because you guys are the future CEOs, owner operators. Don't get famous and don't act like you don't know me, because I'm gonna show out if I see you at the book signing and y'all don't say something to me. That's all I'm saying. This is all possible. I know. To anybody's anxious, anybody's nervous, we got one excitement. Anybody else?
Stop. I'm not teacher.
I'm scared a little bit too.
Oh, that works. If you're not fearful a little bit, then you're not doing it big enough. So you're on the right track. Okay. You're on the right track. I'm scared every day, but it works out for me. As long as you do the work, and you got to have a purpose in mind. So think about the reasons you're starting. Is it for the baby that's in the room right now? Is it for your own sense of peace and achievement? You got to get that in your mind, and that could change over time, but just know what it is while you're doing it.
Oh, bye.
Okay.
Anybody else? Monica, anybody saying anything in the chat? Unfortunately, I can't read it.
I'm saying I'm not well, I was scared of DCRA. I was so stressed out, which I'm like, where were you at when we really needed somebody to kind of like go through the step by step, because it was so simple. But I will share with the group really quick that and I can share it in the link. When they're ready to go to DCRA, they actually have a site where you can sign up, and you can talk to somebody one-on-one for like 45 minutes and they'll walk you right through the process.
Yep. They have come a
Yep.
long way.
Yes.
And just keep in mind, they don't mean to be complicated, but they have federal regulations and local regulations the agency has to follow. So sometimes when they write things, it's in that legal language. Instead of just saying, well, who the owners are, they just put, members, and, you're like, what the hell does that mean? They have to, by law, use this legal language. So, but they've been very good. I have actually emailed them questions and they've gotten back to me. So they are your friend. Trust and believe. They're your friend. So thank you so much for adding that point in. I really appreciate it. Anybody else? We got excited. We got a little fearful. Anybody else? We got overwhelmed. Good information. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's okay. It's okay. If you're gonna get to the 8 million, it's got to have a lot of elements, right? Because in my mind, you guys are going to be the millionaires. That in my mind, that's where we're going with this. Okay, that's where we're going. So if you're going to have a $10 million company, we got to lay a nice foundation. But yes, it is overwhelming. Yeah. Admitting it is good. That's where we can face it. What you don't want to do is make decisions out of fear. You want to acknowledge your fear because it's simply your body saying, you know what? I'm not sure. Are you sure where you're going with this? And it reminds you to be like, okay, what's the entrepreneurial process? Have I looked at everything write the plan up? Did I ignore something because I didn't like it or whatever the case may be? So yes, you're on the right track if you're feeling overwhelmed. That's good too. Anybody else? You guys see a lot of making sense in the chat. Okay, good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's what I have for you tonight. We'll return on Thursday and we start to get into the customer and product related systems. Remember, all the systems overlap. So, it's a little bit repetitiveness, so it starts to click in your mind. But that's what I have for you tonight. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to email me and it's no problem. Walden, are you taking over now, or is there any other questions, thoughts?
No, I think you covered everything. Sorry, just wanted to, thank everyone for joining and remind you all, as Dr. Walker said, we are back here on Thursday at the same time, 6 p.m. We'll be logged in by 5:30. So for the early birds and those who want to get in and just kind of talk and have bits and pieces of conversations before we get started, please feel free to join us at 5:30 on Thursday. But yeah, that's it.
I'm sorry. Oh, one thing, can everybody put their email in the chat so that Monica could send you the slides?
Yes.
So you'll have it before the next session, so you could read through it and have any questions, we could always review it as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. Good, great. I see some, we'll just give some time for everybody to put their email in. And I'll just type mine as well in case you want to copy and paste it. Or save it on your phone. Okay. So Bolden, you guys will be able to see all the emails and collect them so we can have, okay, do a mass email. All right.
Yes.
All right, so I will close. So yeah, I'll close this out. And I will stop
But
sharing.
yeah, great stuff. Great stuff.
We're gonna try to have fun this summer for these future millionaires. Because I might need a job in the future. I don't know. It might be.
All
So
right.
it's been a pleasure. We're at 7:30 on the dot, if I'm not mistaken, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Yeah. All right, y'all have a good one.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Walker.
No problem. See you on Thursday.
Yes.